authorities from my university, Rector Stanislav Nikolaenko and Head of Department Viktor Maurer. And I would like to say that today everyone would be able to request a certificate upon the participation. Now in the chat box you will find the link for Google form, and everyone is welcome to fill it. And there you will find the poll for leaving your email address, asking for certificates, and also short feedback on few marks, few scores, and also if you wish you can leave some comments or maybe following questions, etc. You're welcome to fill the form and leave your details and contacts for sending you digital certificates. Also, I should mention that today's presentation will be going one by one, and all the questions and answers and any discussion will be possible after all the presentation will be finished. So you are welcome to leave messages in chat box asking questions, and after we finish with presentation we will say the questions we have to speakers. So please mention whom you are asking in the beginning of your question, and then fill the information of the question. And firstly, we will start with a presentation of Dr. Sas Biswas. I'm absolutely happy that Dr. Biswas has a great team all over the world, and impressive his long experience of 47 years working in forestry. And now on the slide you can see a big team helping in conducting research. Also, Dr. Sas Biswas, he is doing a lot for education and sharing his big knowledge and experience to new generation. And it's very important that he is a fellow of Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, which is organizing such an important event all over the world, International Day of Soils. And also Sas Biswas is considering to develop the knowledge about the biodiversity, and that's why it's a key speaker today, because the topic of this International Day is a biodiversity of the soils. So we'll hear a lot about such aspect. And you can find a lot of publication of this researcher, so you're welcome. If you have some questions, etc., you'll have a contact and you can conduct the collaboration, ask the questions, and so on.
Now, it's my turn to speak about Dr. Ganna Lovchenko. We are an association on different aspects of the subject with the National University of Life and Environmental Sciences, and Dr. Ganna Lovchenko has been very much instrumental in making me updated on what is going in the field of biodiversity, genetic resource, soil science, agroforestry, and many subjects. And I must tell you, during this pandemic period, during the 8 months, is the second one, India, I'll say, representing India, and Ukraine, this is the second joint event. First one was on 22nd of May on the International Day of Biodiversity. So her role in coming jointly, it has been very, very nice and very, very significant in the field of education, extension, and research. Dr. Ganna is Assistant Professor of Forest Restoration and Evaluation Department of National University of Life and Environmental Sciences of Ukraine, KYIB, and our work focuses on watershed restoration, which is one of the most important subjects in the field of any, I would say, topics related to soil science, agriculture, forestry, and interrelated. She advises the student projects on restoration in protected areas. I must tell you, she remains so much busy. It becomes very difficult sometimes to come over to talk about how we are going to join and all. But she is always prompt at the response. She studied forestry and agroforestry at National University of Life and Environment Sciences, PhD in agriculture sciences about 5 years ago, and her thesis has been widely recalled. A phytoindication of windbreak for the right bank forestry region of Ukraine. So for the country like Ukraine, this is one of the most important. We are going to, have a presentation about it. She is also head of the Council of Young Scientists of Research Institute of Forestry and Park Gardening of Ukraine region. Dr. Ganna also coordinates the Forestry Students Association and is Secretary of Ukrainian Agroforestry Association. I would like to tell the participants and others, in fact, because of this present COVID-19, we remain at distance. Otherwise, students were supposed to come to Dehradun and meet our forestry students to have, common field of working. Now we come to Dr. Sinjini Goswami. And so it adds to the third continent to our today's joint program that is from North America and Europe, represented by Dr. Gadna. Of course, India is there by me. And Dr. Sinjini is he comes from always Macroecology School of Natural Sciences, and then he's assistant professor of biology. And during the past about 15 days, when communicating with he became so much busy with, of course, before the Christmas holidays, he became busy with the semester work with the students and all. But we feel happy and obliged to Dr. Sinjini that she has come to make our program wonderful. PhD in ecology, evolution, and environmental biology, way back in 2001 in Hamburg, Austria, and University of Eastern Finland, Master of Science in European Forestry. She is an alumni from University of Calcutta, Presidency College, Bachelor of Science in Botany, way back in 2006. And he has got a research interest, ecology and biogeochemistry in terrestrial ecosystem, environmental statistics, modeling using R as PSS statistical package, data visualization using ARC or GIS, and she's got wonderful teaching experiences in the School of Natural Behavioral Sciences for 2020. She's still there. Yale University, visiting assistant professor, Department of Biology, invited teaching seminar on ecology and plants and biology at different educational institutions. She has got good many number of publications in the field of forestry research and education in internationally reputed journals, books, and manuals and awards. Now, the turn of the presentation. Dr. Ganna?
Yeah, now we are going for presentation. So you're welcome to start.
Yeah. So my topic is the Indian forest soil biodiversity judicial utilization and management. All of us like by a student of mine, Pranthika, to give me to put it in this particular event. Uh, Now, before I move, uh, I must say this joint event is not too much of research or extension, too much of education and all. It's a day of celebration and to celebrate the soil. So the poem that comes, my friends in Ukraine, they will be translated by the kind humor of my Dr. Ganna in Ukrainian language. The soil forms life. It's its life. But little we know, all the sincere need. It burns itself to prevent us from heat. It protects itself and absorbs all heat. This was by a girl who made a poem on the soil of life about 10 years ago. And if we see the Hindu or Indian ancient scriptures, we find it as mentioned in the Vedas, Vedas particularly, found this handful of our survival defense. Care for it. It will grow our soil, our shelter, and sound us will good. Abuse it, and the soil will collapse and die, taking humanity with it. Then, by USDA, Natural Resource Conservation Services, soil is living thing. It is very slowly moving, changing and growing all the time. Just like other things, soil breathes and needs air, water to stay alive. Healthy living soil provides us with your everyday needs. So the soil is a living thing, and we are going to put in research on this in this present international webinar. If we see, we find the polysolar agroclimatic, agroecological, and then about the forest types also that matter from the subject. If we see the ancient verses in the Indian textbooks of Hinduism, in Sanskrit 59 LPS. So they were mentioned there were two types of the native soil, Udvara and Usha, and the otherwise they have the desert, fallow, uprata, grassy, muddy, water, land containing with water, full of pebbles, sandy, uh, land, and maybe much more environment rain and all. So that means we can understand the soil is a living thing and it lives in the different types of things. And on the basis of the fertility, education, and physical characteristics, we find that variously linked. The earlier the soil was classified with reference to Indian region on its fertility. Soil was either Urva or Usa. So we used to say, what's implying to Urva? Means what? Usa. No, nothing can be grown there. It's a Usa land. But in modern days, soil type is classified based on texture, color, moisture content. And we have got the soil and land use survey of India is here from here. I'm, speaking about this in South India. That's under Government of India. And it was earlier Soil Survey of India, now this is called Soil and Land Use Survey of India. And if we do see here, we come to the forest soil, we find in the forest soil, they have the higher count of microflora, uh, microflora and flora, then soil with no organic matter. Considered as a living soil, which you know, varies from place to place. See what we can do. So I just wanted oh, yeah, there it has come here. So, we find here that the major types, Tardigrade, red, and alluvial, and there are all some things that we find this. So these are the major types. But if you see the major types of soil found in. If we go in further in depth, we find the laterite soil have got deficiency in nitrogen, where it is found in Western Ghats and Vindhyas region. And we have got a plantation that means the soil is responsible for giving us the food in the form of rice, millet, sugarcane, and so on and so forth. Then mountain soil was a form due to accumulation and rich in humus, but has lime, potash, and phosphorus, phosphorus. And Himalayan region, in Bangladesh, I will come to that. But here, in the picture shows, there A, B, C, the bedrock is here, and the separate. This is for the attention, those who are not studying the soil in depth or just have started learning about the forest soil. Then we have here the kind of the soil which we do find here, the black soil. The black soil in part of central India, western India, and south India, they have produced some of the best quality cotton, and that's called cotton soil for that, a black cotton soil, besides tobacco, linseed, millet, all seeds, cotton soil. Soil to give us the food, and that is from this, whereas the red soil is with very good uh, percentage of iron content, and they found in South India, Central India, and then in some parts of, uh, Maharashtra. And we come to the next one, where we do find these features, which shows about these features, different ones found in India. This is what it is already mentioned, but I wanted to show the reason for where they are found there. So the localization speaks about this. Then we come to the yet another kind of the soil which is responsible for the prosperity of the places, the locations, the rural communities, the villages, and it is either in the form of valuable soil of northern India or in the form of the deltas in this part of it. So River Godavari, River Krishna, and River Kaveri. Uh, they all form a delta which is responsible for the good crop of wheat, rice, maize, sugarcane, pulses, and all that. Then we come to the desert soil, and the interesting thing, when we say desert, it is, we call the desert, the soil is never deserted, and we can see here, then here this part where we find some desert, but you'll see there some of the wonderful species of cacti, shrubs, in rains, phosphates, and nitrates, like desert soil, fertile resulting in desert bloom. So you can just see here. So even the seed, before their viability is lost, they come to the bloom. So that makes one of the most important, even when the seed laden soil of the desert under the first drop of rain that results into the food for the wildlife, as you can see here. And then we come to the, when we come to this, we decide to forest styles, we come to the agroecological, agroclimatic zones. So they are the different regions. At the time, if we superimpose this, we have the geographical information, then we can come to understand under agroecological region and agroclimatic region how the soil has got the different types. And then we, if we go with the next one, then we must find the saline. And interesting thing, saline water, after the evaporation and translation, called water soluble salt, move upwards. So in northern India, some parts of Gujarat, and coastal areas accumulate salt from inundated seawater. But the vegetation is there. And you may have some kind of to avoid this soil, we can make it, try to make it in other mineral-based aspect, but due to presence of mineral-based and decomposed contents of Earth, then comes up. Then we have got the major forest and soil types. Just watch it here and show. So what we do find here, 14 is to 16. And when we talk about the 14 into 16, so we find here, this is here, which speaks about the types of the forest. And against the forest, it is 16 types of the soil. So it is so interesting when we come to the juxtaposition of the soil biodiversity or the soil diversity with forest diversity or forest biodiversity. From here you can make out that if we come to this, say for example, this is here. So you will find it here that this is a shallow back and all that coming up here. And then this part, if we superimpose with the forest type, the type of the forest, which comes here in the tropical dry desert, is getting. So one type of major forest type is subjected to different forest types of the soil. And this one is skeletal. Here it is skeletal, trans-Himalayan boundary, which covers many areas of Jammu and Kashmir, and you can see districts in Ladakh. And here you find here, so interesting that this skeletal is the take this skeletal type of this is found in cold arid ecoregion, which covers 15.2 million hectares area, and it's got say by volume 35%, 35% of rock fragment, gravel, and laterite, concretions, iron stones, and less than more than 2 millimeter of diameter here in the skeleton. And this portion is the forest and mountainous type of that's well. And then with a shallow depth of less than 50 centimeter like this. And if we take this and come to this, we find the alpine and subalpine region. So this is from this makes one of the most forest types in juxtaposition with the soil type. Then the peat soil is the different places, very rich, 10 to 14% of the organic matter we find in some parts of northern India where it is found in where the scientification has diminished and the rich decomposition of the leaf litter and organic matter is there. And in the Sundarbans, this is one reason where the vegetation, the forest type are having a good diversity of this. Now we come to the next part, which is multi-value. We have the conventional biological diversity is what's called biodiversity treaty, where the soil life, that back in 2002, it was made the variation of soil life from genes to community and the ecology complexes of which they are part. That is from soil microhabitat to landscapes. So represent variety of life. So this is what we consider the biodiversity. Proportionally even next, alpha, beta, gamma diversity, the person may be also expected to encompass phenotypic, expressed, functional topic. So this are always axis that on the associated level by orders of magnitude, particularly at the microbial scale. Now, when we come to microbial scale, let us see what I could show everyone. It is this year we found that World Soil Day is dedicated to the microbial biodiversity, if I can understand. But the protection matters most when it comes to this. Then keep soil alive, protect soil biodiversity is World Soil Day. So that is what we are, dedicating or commemorating for Soil Day. I must tell the participants and the delegates that this is our third year uh, mm, of World Soil Day, and the first time we started in 2017, 18, 19, and the fourth year, this is first year, and the fourth year we are doing through the webinar. Earlier in Dolphin previous Institute, we did all the celebration in the field, the pictures degree. We all did World Soil Day in the field, forest and all, nothing on webinars or presentation or computerized or digitized. So, all organisms are called plant and engineers, an integral part of forestry and agriculture ecosystem. So, most interesting thing that I learned was that 1 teaspoon of soil, that is 1 gram, may typically contain 1 billion bacteria, corresponding to about 10,000 different bacteria. So, up to 1 million individual fungi, plus 1 million cells of protein, several hundred of nematodes, 12 harbors different species of meso and macro megafauna, arthropods, earthworms, mammals, besides microorganisms and the microfauna. Today I'm going to show you the champion one, them also. Just wait for a moment. So we find here uh, here. So we find bacteria, archaea, protozoa, algae, fungi, viruses, multi-animals, helminths and all. So they all form one of some of the most important components of making the soil a living thing. Characteristics cellular composition, morphology, means of locomotion, and reproduction. This is what I do find from note from a European work. This was about the soil biodiversity in numbers, and we find here 10,000, 100,000, hundreds of the species of mycelium, 550 kilometers. So the fungi mycelium can be of as many as of 500 species, which we, if we straighten it, it will go to 50 kilometers along besides from bacteria to species of worm and mammal. But these are our champions. This is I will call team soil biodiversity. Team soil biodiversity. It makes us feel proud so many things, whether we never understand about the importance of the soil and they sometimes, degraded. But here we find one of the most, whom I call a champion, is the tardigrades. Tardigrades, a group of tiny microscopic invertebrates. Just have patience. I am going to show something like it is seen in some documentary. So eat bacteria. These tardigrades, they eat bacteria, plants, and other microscopic organisms. There are 270 species of tardigrades throughout the world. And interestingly, in Himalayan region, we have the tardigrades as many as of 41 species are recorded, and 20 from India, and 23 species alone from this. This is from the work of scientists named Day and Monzo, and this shows the group of the tardigrades they come up, and how it very things looks like this. This is the one which is the champion one. Look how pretty this one. If you see this one, this lives on this, and the most this is the one which most likely will have the first organism landing on other than on the Earth, be it Moon, Mars, or Venus. And then I shall tell you in my last slide on this how it comes up there. Then we find that 8 soil samples from agroforestry system in South India and all, they found the microorganism, and that is the population was recorded recorded to vacuum 64, like that. But I will move to the next more interesting one. But total bacteria which is involved, we find like this. We have these many the chemistry of those features, which we're going to know more in depth by Dr. Sinjini's great work in the field of this particular topic. And then we have here that visible here. So visual ways of studying microbial biodiversity, direct observation and counting, functional assays, molecular fingerprint. So relies on direct abstraction of DNA from soil, identification of microorganisms, then even through the sequencing of some portion barcoding of the genomes. Then new sequencing technology is essential. This is the emerging field for the soil students who are studying in this particular field. Technique has to lead to observe a microbial soil biodiversity higher than abstracted. And then we can see the next one. Come on. Not, let's see. It will work. Yep. Now we come to the fact. This becomes one of the most important one where we find good many types of threats and climate change, land use change, habitat fragmentation, intensive human exploitation, soil organic matter decline, nuclear pollution, industrial pollution, soil erosion, soil compaction, soil salinization, use of GMOs, agriculture, invasive species, allelopathic impact. That is what is teaching. Dehradun, this is not that much is known as, but it is one of the 100 top invasive species. Of course, big loss to the properties of the soil that we living things for lots, then lantana, and then here got a petroleum and the by chemical changes in the soil that has completely spoiled and this is one threat and the mitigation of each of them can work out on how to improve the soil properties. Reduction of forms, quantity and variety, help to soil erosion, contamination, salinization, and then killing. That is then notable, then even polluted or severely this as soil is still support relatively high levels of microbial diversity at least. Specific groups may be more susceptible to certain pollutants or species than others. Then we do find symbiotic to legumes and all strong. You are requested to mute yourself, my dear friends. And then we find threats to uh, above and below ground. Forest fires have many implications. I need not to elaborate on it. You need to know the wildfires have a significant impact on the properties of the soil. Heat of the fire burns away all the vegetation and organic matter. This matters most. But in subsequent one, you will find here you can find here how it matters most. Say, you just see here, this is what Central India and the cases in till March 2019, the cases, or I can mention the Punjab, you this is high heat zone of fire, you can say, forest fire, or the burning of the waste of the crops. So, as per report, 550 forest fire in India in this period, 209 South Indian states, Andhra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. So India loses in the rupees this much crore, which is equally you can see, and and 35, 37, where the allotment is. So this becomes a, if we have to save the soil, we have to spend the money also. So government has to think of, because the threat to the soil is a threat to the forest, to the livelihood, to the interdependent elements. Then we have here uh, say, about the period which shows the full impact of forest fires. We can find it on remote sensing data. So loss of terrestrial ton of carbon dioxide. So that is on fire carbon emission. So here, on fire is resulting into these gigatons of carbon. So now what happens? Both fire and normal years to like the association between such fire and ecosystem productivity. Finding ecosystem productivity is directly proportional to the soil biodiversity. Then we have, yeah, the most interesting thing which we are to find in the ecosystem component, that is uh, some of the forest, for example, the Sal forest, which covers leafless forest or deciduous forest of India, Indian subcontinent very much. So when it is here, that when it is burned, then IVI is an important value in that, which is measured in 0 to 300, measure of now dominant is in given forest area. Higher the value we find, the more stable the forest is there. So now, there is fire. There is, if we find unburned this area, oh, let me go back. So, and this is unburned, and this is burned. So, you find even then IBI is coming up. It is much so unburned area. So, it means we do still believe that some of the good forest of Spodia robusta or teak Tectona grande. It is said forest fire help in regeneration of many of the species which provide the mosaic to the undergrowth, flora of those types of the forest. So, but it has to be controlled for me, not to the wildlife. Then we come to the ozone. We cannot use the ozone and with the soil microbial community. The threat to terrestrial ecosystem and biodiversity is ozone. Ozone affects oleochemistry and the emissions of volatiles. The plant soil microbe composition of some microscope also alpha diversity is often reduced number of species per area. Now, Atlantic islands in northern hemisphere is like a presentation because and so forth, and in India is the coastline, the Himalayan region. They are highly considered to be in high endemic richness at high or list by 2100. Now we come to antibiotics. If we add another threat, so we find the antibiotic releasing to the field, to the soil, which comes up from wastewater treatment plants. It enters through they enter the soil, and and then there are the production of antibiotics even from the slaughterhouse. It goes to the the wastewater treatment plant and again going to the soil. So this becomes one of the most important components, and this is considered to be some of the frontiers in the soil microbiology history. And here, that's where we come to this conversion of natural forest. This is also when we convert the natural forest, where the community composition is established, it goes on changing. We may have the newer microbial community, but we lose those indigenous species, those which many years uh, have developed resistance to many of those animals. This comes about. So that's so we understand about these features that plantation altered microbial community position matters the most. Then we have come, I'm coming towards the end of my topic. Then so what measures we have to take it? One is we are supported to file biodiversity. That is one of the most important components. Of course, the International Convention for the Biodiversity Treaty. And it was, you see, this comes up under the conservation of biological diversity and all this, even sustainable use of biological diversity, fair sharing of benefits coming from biological diversity. Dear friends, when it comes to the fair sharing of benefits coming from biological diversity, this will definitely be with this aspect too. Say about 15 years ago, from Indian soil, as many as 20 patents from the soil bacteria, production of antibiotic compound, mitocomin, capromycin, polpistin, glucosamine, antifungal antibiotic, and in fact, the antibiotic first that was discovered and that was also from the soil and later on it became an antibiotic to check the human suffering world over. And then the antifungal agent. And they are all patented by the companies like Pfizer, Bristol, Mayer, and Merck. I don't know, maybe uh, many instances must be working as how to check the soil microbial diversity for controlling the coronavirus. Let's wait and see. And I have to just show you the species which we have studied that come from these species. You find here um, acacia, acacia merensi, which is a bottle from South Africa in 1842 in the Indian region, in South India, they were introduced. Now they have almost developed their own paradigm. And then this is Europa, which was introduced by Britishers from Europe, that was introduced in Western Ghats, and we find they are all dominated by the vegetation. And the recent one is with this particular species of mimosa invasiva. It comes from the inundation in the northeast, and then changes the soil structure, partly negative for plant anaerobic. Okay, and Acacia prosopis juliflora mascot. This is also one of the species which is now. What we do required to know from this is as we can see that criteria indicators required. We do required to go with the very fast types and subtypes and enumeration species is present soil taxonomic features. So soil taxonomy is also one of the most important components which we do need the input from the fundamental soil phenotypic data of the soil type. Forest is species specific biodiversity above and below. And forest invasive species, this is also one of the most important where we do develop the criteria, indicators, and require. And then we come to one of the most important, soil health and cost. It is already there in India, where our Honorable Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, he started the soil health card, and now after becoming Prime Minister of India, he is now doing for the different parts of the country. So it's a health card, something like we do have the medical card. So this is piece of what kind of soil, characteristic features, and then in situ and ex situ conservation, repositories of novel isolate This is one of the most important ones. If you find some of the novelized there, in the form of any feature that is required to develop as a live report. Of course, the restoration measure, which my friend Dr. Khanna is going to speak, and then the introduction. Of course, this is such a big subject that we to require, public-private partnership to strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis. On this is the one which I just wanted to tell you, which has been further been done. There was just over 105 Minister soil and called a savior for farmers. When we say farmers, it is for the soil, principally, I will say, dedicating the present joint venture or joint venture webinar. Soil has cost, it has got the issue of 12 crore soil has cost minded, and then for all the world, once a cycle of 2 years. Information to the farmer, optimal doses of fertilizer application. When it comes to the farmers, I will say, two, it matters. Nationwide work program to improve soil health. So this becomes, Swasthadhara, Khethara, and when we come to this, we find that shifting cultivation is one of the most important. Slash and burning, not whether soil erosion is also one, but shifting cultivation I consider is one of those which causes a lot of problems with relation to the soil micro biodiversity. And first biodiversity also, the shifting sand dunes, coastal salinity. So we need to develop a projected uh, activities, action plans towards these which matter most. Then we have got the cooperation support, regional, national, international, global, and in fact the present one is intercontinental, singly from North America, um, then from Europe, and of course from India, as we're speaking. So we find this becomes one of the interdisciplinary exchange of specialists, faculty, and without that, we may not be able to understand about the best practices and lessons from the worst, from the worst. So, besides among the research and development, of course, grassroots innovation is there, and the awareness, capacity, extension material, and the last slide. This is the one I just want to relate on this. This is with regards to what Chandrayaan, the satellite, which is to land, which was to land on the moon, and there was some difficulty; it could not do it to the satisfaction of one looking this. So what it was done in, I'm presently in South India, in Tamil Nadu, remote sensing and other embedded space. They got the area in this place of South India, then took this picture. They found there is land, and that comes very close to the land on the moon, and where whichever I do, I have to prepare an artificial moon so that the Vikram lander and the Pragyan rover could be tested. When it comes to the rock, we must also think of this too. And this is the champion micro, what we know that tardigrades. And the most interesting thing is that between 1 to 1 millimeter length, and it can survive minus 272 degrees Celsius. So can survive under minus 272 degrees Celsius, and then it can withstand the heat, which is more than even 150 degrees Celsius. So what happened? This particular the one which is found or the soil microbial, it is been reported on the lower parts. For example, on liverwort, moss, and those areas. So it is found in several places, and one of the, I would say the microbial, soil microbial biodiversity, if we feel, happy that we have got this one, but we still do that now. What happens here when it goes beyond its requirement of food, what it is, and algae, fungi, whatever it does, even it eats upon its own brothers and sisters, or because it becomes a carnivorous too, and it reaches to the level of what we call it suspended animation. Suspended animation, that is what cryptobiosis, it can remain, we revive of the decades later. So even many years after that also it can be done. So this is just as one that there are the microbial biodiversity in the soil and there are different regions. We need to now highlight on this is much more and then come on this. This is I have a I say the slogan which came in my mind. I just scribbled it. Soul of us is soil, and soil is for all we need. And look at this. This was there was last year. Many of them are attending the training. Thank you for having a patient attention. Hello.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I remind that questions will be in the end of all three presentations. And for those who just join us, you can find the Google form link if you need a certificate, digital certificate of your participation. You can fill the form. I am sending again the link in the chat box. Please check it. If you really need the certificate, you can leave your contacts in the Google form unless you cannot receive the certificate, because the contacts in the chat will not be saved, so we cannot arrange the certificates later. And thank you again, Sas Biswas, for your very informative presentation. And my presentation will be a bit different. It will be more about the agroforestry practices for soil conservation, as I am dealing with the agroforestry in Ukraine. And actually on the picture you can see typical landscape with agricultural lands and windbreaks, as we call it, or we can find another determination like shelter belts, that is linear striped stands that protect agricultural lands against the different natural hazards. Please, next one. And here on the map, you can see where is Ukraine located. It's the eastern part of Europe. For those who never hear about such country, you can now find out it on the map of Europe. So yes, this is eastern part. It's not actually the European Union, but we are close on the border with the European Union. And Ukraine is one of the biggest country in the Europe. You can see the total area that is written in down part of the slide. So due to such a big sizes, we have a totally different climate and soil conditions. And on the next slide, please, you can see the soils map and humus content in arable layer of soils of Ukraine. The darkest parts are the most fertile, and you can see it in the middle part and eastern part. And the light beige color is a lowest content of humus in the soil. Actually, I would like to just describe shortly the humus and the soils distribution in Ukraine. So the northern part, the light colors, is sandy soils of Polysa region, so it's forest region, mostly covered with pine forest, and it's not. Sorry, please switch off your mics once you
Please
enter in
mute
conservation.
yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. So in the northern part, you can see soils that are represented with forests. It's not arable lands, but the main part is covered with pine forest. In the middle part, where is a brown colors, there I think you cannot see my pointer, so I will try to just describe. Okay. So in the middle part, we have more fertile soils covered with arable lands mostly, and some part of forest lands. And the south part of Ukraine is mostly presented with grasslands and arable land, as it's we call it steppe area grasslands. And due to climate conditions, it's the most. Okay, I think now I can show point my presentation or not. Okay, doesn't matter. In the so in the eastern, in the south part, it's lack of moisture, and naturally forest doesn't grow there. But the super fertile soils were interested all the time for economical benefits for growing agricultural crops. Since that, a lot of arable lands were considered as potential for ploughing, for growing plants for economical purposes. And on the next slide, you will see next one. Yeah, in this slide you will see the southern part, typical grasslands and species on the left side, and the right side you will see typical agriculture lands. And as you can see, it's plain terrains for long distance, that there is no any other kind of vegetation. So everything is ploughed and used for agriculture purpose. Due to such unnormal tendency to involve every fertile soil for agricultural production, some centuries ago, like starting since 19th century, started a lot of problems with erosion, soil erosion. And firstly, due to wind erosion, because on such areas there is no barrier for winds that stop the speed of the wind, and with a speed of 12-15 meters per second, start the dust storm. So on the next slide, you will see typical problems with wind erosion, that is dust storms that happen usually in south part of Ukraine, where there is not much of forest and mostly arable lands. I should say that like 55% of total area of Ukraine is agricultural land, and actually on south is like up to 90% are involved in agriculture. So typically 1-2 times per year there's some dust storms in the south, and it affects a lot agricultural land and agricultural crops and life of average citizens of that area, because it damage vegetation and also affect buildings, communication systems, and so on. And due to such unoptimized use of land happen on the not only on flat areas, but on some slopes, we can find water erosion. The next slide will demonstrate some samples. Yeah, thank you. So usually in the end of arable lands happens some slopes, and due to inappropriate techniques of soil ploughing or planting the same crops on the same area for a long time, and no infiltration of precipitation by the vegetation happened, that water erosion developed, and you can see now the ravines and gullies that happen due to such problem. Next one. If we say about general statistic, actually 1/3 of territory suffer erosion problems. That is a main problem for Ukrainian soils, and including 10%, it's strongly affected. So 10% of this 31 is in the stage of strongly affected, and usually hard to restore and back the usage and fertility. And also 10% is under wind erosion, so actually happen due to wind. And if you summarize such loss of soil and name it in the more easier for understanding, it's like 10-12 million tons of grains of crops lost annually due to such erosion problems. So losing fertile soil, we are losing crops and economical possible benefits. So we are losing money and food due to such erosion problems. Next one, please. And I had to say that this problem happened not so long time ago, but first tendency to occupy steppe area bring us a lot of dust storms. So in 18.9 started the first measures to protect agricultural lands against the wind and soil erosion, and first windbreaks afforestation has been started in central part of Ukraine. It was more experimental, doing by chance and not having much scientific support, but it was a starting point, and since that time a lot of experience has been developed and a lot of knowledge and scientific expeditions for planting such interesting kind of stems like windbreaks in arable lands to protect all the territories against natural hazards. And by the end of 20th century, it was like 940,000 hectares of windbreaks established along the Ukrainian arable lands at like about 300,000 kilometers. Due to such number, it was protected about 13 million hectares of arable lands, and on these lands were better microclimate conditions, which provided about 5 million tons of cereals additionally each year. So due to such protection, it's not only supported with soil conservation, but also with some economical benefits. But anyway, this number is not enough for protection all the arable lands. It's only a half of optimal number, and more than 460,000 are needed more of such windbreaks. And next one, please. Telling about windbreaks, what does it mean? Usually, if we look into the official definition, that windbreaks or shelter belts are located on the border of the field, on the plain terms, so not on the slopes, on the plain territories up to 2 degrees where water erosion is not affecting a lot, but mostly affected by wind. And according to the standard definition, windbreaks are an artificial protective forest plantation, the form of stripes, which serve to protect arable lands and agricultural crops from the effects of adverse natural and anthropogenic factors. I should mention that location of such plantation you can see on the picture, and usually it's about 500-600 meters between stripes of such plantations, and they usually located against the direction of the wind to protect fields. And plantations can be different construction, different structure. We will see on the next slides about the structure, and depending on the construction, it's different effect on the fields. Okay, let's go with the next. So due to agroforestry systems and usage of windbreaks, we can control somehow erosion processes and prevent them. And usually always we are talking about economical benefits. And if you are saying about the yield of crops, we can say the numbers of average increasing. And if you talk about cereals like grains, like wheat, barley, and so on, it's like up to 16% we can get due to protection of windbreaks. And if you're talking about sugar beet, it's 20%, so 1/5. Sunflower is 18%, and corn about 28%. As I mentioned before, the optimal number of windbreak is not enough. It should be about 3%, and now it's like a half. But losing such a small number of arable area for establishing windbreaks, we can get up to 10-20% of extra yield on the fields. Also, we should be truly understanding that it's not so fast to get economical benefits, because we should understand that windbreaks don't start to make an effect on the field since they are planted. We should wait for 10-15 years to get economical benefits that cover cost of creation such agroforestry systems. But anyway, the idea of establishment such system was clear: to protect the lands and get additional benefits, considering economical goals. Next one, please. And as I mentioned before, different construction have different impacts on the wind and on the microclimate conditions. So we define 3 types of construction: blown design, as on the first picture, sieve look design on the middle one, and dense, not blown design in the last one. And depending on such construction, the first one is most appropriate and most effective for wind interruption. It's like, if we say about main parameters that influence on the protection, it's a height of the plantation. So if we are talking about first construction, it's like 30 heights influence can be supplied by such a windbreak. So if we say that a windbreak has a height of 20 meters and 30 heights is like 600 meters of protected area behind the windbreak. If you talk about the middle sieve-looked design, it's 25 heights. So if we are talking about height of 20 meters, and it's about 500 meters of protection. And the less appropriate for economical benefits is the last, not blown design. It provides like not too much, 10-15 heights, But if we are talking about biodiversity, the last one is the most effective because species composition, if we are talking about flora and fauna, is the most variable. And on the next graphs, we will see how different designs provide effects on wind. So the black one is a windbreaks of non-blown design, so without any porosity, like up to 10% porosity. And as you can see, this kind of windbreaks can decrease the speed of wind before the plantation, but just on the 5 heights of plantation, the wind speed starts to increase and can reach indexes even higher than before before the plantation. And seal blown and temporary seal blown design influence well on the wind protection. So it can protect up to 25 heights successfully and doesn't have bad effects on the plantation, on the crops we are planting on the agricultural land. So due to different designs, we can regulate the wind regime. And I should say that usually up to 30–50% can be decreased the speed of the wind. That is important when we have dry season and when the crops evaporate a lot of moisture, and losing moisture, we have this balance of supplying of water and evaporation, and in this condition can be drought of in the atmosphere and soil, and we can lose a lot of crops and the annual yield. So thanks to windbreaks, we can regulate such processes and provide appropriate conditions for crops in during such a situation with a lack of moisture. And also on the next slide, it's also a graph. We can find the different microclimate indexes, for example, formation of dew, soil moisture, evaporation, speed, surface soil, and wind effective zone of influence. So you can find that due to windbreaks, we can increase a number of moisture in the soil and in the atmosphere. We decrease evaporation of the plants and we decrease the speed of the wind. And also due to such protection, we have less soil erosion. So we can conserve fertility of soils and protect them against the erosion processes. Next one, please. And also, it's not a secret that dust storms happen quite often. And as I said before, historically, dust storms started the history of windbreak deforestation as a key problem. And in last century, there was a lot of dust storms, and the most effective and the most intensive was in 1960, 1969, and 1984. And on the picture, you can see the winter of 1969, when due to dust storm, fertile soils from the southern part of Ukraine were removed and moved to the northern part for like 500 kilometers. And only due to windbreaks, some part of them was stopped and landed in the fields. And behind the man that you can see on the picture, there is a snow covered with a soil, fertile soil. And of course, it was a long time for melting such a number of snow covered with the soil, but anyway, a big number were left on the region, and not all the quantity moved to the northern part. And I have to mention that even in such protective landscapes, still 1.3 million hectares of winter crops were lost. So in that years were a big government program helping and providing financial support for establishment windbreaks. And why we are talking about this problem? Because in April 10, 2020, we suffered again dust storm, but not in south part, but in northern part. That makes a lot of people think about what's happening now in Ukraine and why we suffer such a problem, having a great experience and knowledges of preventing the problem. Next one. And talking about this problem, I would mention two main factors. First one, that we have a lot of challenges in land use, because as I mentioned before, about 75% of Ukrainian drylands is used for agricultural businesses. 79% are plowed. That every year the soil is disturbed with agricultural measures. And for balance, only 16% are covered with a forest. And on the map on the right side, the darkest colors are showing the most forested areas, and the gray color is almost not covered with a forest. And this is the south part where the biggest number of agricultural lands. So there is not enough balance between agricultural lands and forestry. And also there is a problem that not too much citizens understand the importance of natural grasslands. Why aggressive, yes, thank you. Next one, aggressive agriculture activity affect a lot the fields and also kill a lot of grasslands with important species and biodiversity. Next one, please. And on this slide, I would like to show that nowadays windbreaks need a restoration activities. On the left side, you can see the result of illegal logging, illegal cutting of the windbreaks. This winter happened in the central part of Ukraine, and on the right side you will see degraded forest stand that came to such situation due to long term of usage, and it's quite old and needs a reconstruction. And on the next slide, I would like to mention the reasons why happened such situation. Firstly, there was uncertain owner for a long time. What does it mean? Since the USSR separated for different independent countries, but some land problems were not mentioned, not wasn't uncertain, and due to such status on us or without owner, a lot of windbreaks hasn't any treatments, any felling of died trees and so on. And from the other side, there was a problem that illegal logging wasn't punished because there is no owner of the windbreaks, and a lot of windbreaks were destroyed by illegal loggings. And also economical crisis and lack of fuel sources in the south part of Ukraine, where is not enough forest and fuel production, and make people do illegal activities and also cut windbreaks. And another problem that there is a lack of awareness of windbreaks benefits, because not every farmer wants to take note about the meaning of windbreaks, of their role, and don't want to spend money for treating windbreaks in appropriate conditions. And now also military activities on eastern part in the border with Russia made a lot of disturbances into the nature as well, and windbreaks are used as masking tool, so suffer a lot of anthropogenic factor. Next one. And also another problem that we have, you can find in official sources that Ukraine is one of the 10 largest oil producer of agricultural sector, and you will find that the first number we have in sunflower and sunflower oil. But I should mention that farmers are dealing with sunflower and don't deal with soil conditions. They consider soil as a tool, but not a live organism that have a structure, need to be restored, and need to rest some time from aggressive agricultural crops. So using a lot of sunflower, corn, and soybeans, we are losing soil fertility because there is no turnover for soils to let them restore the appropriate conditions. Next one. And of course, it's not anyone that no one take care about such a problem. There is key actors dealing with windbreaks protection and restoration. Firstly, scientists pay attention to this problem that windbreaks need to be restored, and they have a lot of different ecosystem services, not only protecting agricultural land. Also, different ecological activities, NGOs. For example, the one on the top of the screen, Shelter Birds of Life. I'm also as a scientific consultant of this project dealing with biodiversity in shelter belts. Also, private small-scale farms would like to save such heritage. I should say that it's really heritage of 200 years experience dealing with windbreaks. Some organic farms also trying to preserve windbreaks because they get better yields and do not need to implement any chemical products to get stable yield of the crops. And also permaculture households are interested deeply in maintaining windbreaks, and you can see on the slides few events we had this year. One was webinar about shelter belts of life for permaculture society. Another is Lesasa, that is like forest garden. So NGOs and scientists are doing a lot of effort to promote agroforestry systems and involve a young generation that do not remember the time of Soviet time, that when agroforestry was like government implemented, and now in independent Ukraine is not everyone is aware about such practices, so we are working on it. Next one, please. And as I would like to focus on biodiversity, I should say that windbreaks is a unique heritage that provides not only economical benefit but also ecological. One of them is to provide ecological corridors that can connect key territories with high biodiversity like natural reserves or botanical reserves, whatever, and due to such structure that they are linear and have a big length, they can connect fragmented areas of the forest and provide migration of the species between such territories. And should say that from my own research, mostly native species of trees are able to make appropriate conditions for such aim, because invasive species or introduced species, non-native species, they do not provide such soil conditions, do not protect local flora and fauna. So I should say that if you want to make effective windbreaks, we should take care about local species. And in the end, next one, I would like to show a few samples of agroforestry benefits dealing with biodiversity. So you can see moose on the pictures, also some houses of foxes made in the windbreaks, and also a lot of birds have their home in windbreaks, because not much spaces, not much undisturbed areas for life and wildlife in agricultural land, and such mosaic landscapes can provide it. Last one, I think. Yeah, and also thank you to biodiversity, we can improve stability of the soils, because erosion problems are happening not only due to wind but also by the water. And on the right side you see some mouse, some worms living in the soil. They are making some space, and infiltration of the water is condition when we can regulate water support, water supply, and infiltrate it into the soil. In this case, we can prevent soil erosion and feed the soil with a water resource. So biodiversity of the soil is really important also for erosion control and erosion stability of the soils. And yes, thank you for your attention. And if you are interested in the project of Shelter Belts of Life, you can find it on Facebook page. In the down part in the middle, you can see how it is written or shortly. And on the left side in the top, there's a screen from a TV program about erosion dust storm in the April of this year, and the project made some comments on such problems. And I should say that since that time a lot of attention and offers of collaboration came to us. So we hope that since this time when problems knock in our doors, we start to think more widely about the wildlife and biodiversity. Thank you very much. And yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ganna. It has been very illuminating one. And I would say when you started, it started with the storm, and it went through the storm of knowledge, and then we established it as shelterways and windbreaks. So nice of you to make a wonderful presentation, and I understand many of our participants and delegates must have benefited from the ongoing work, and it is really an eye-opener from the great country, Ukraine. We will now move to next, Dr. Century. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we can start with.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll move and you have to say just move, I'll move for you. Okay?
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. So, first of all, good morning and good afternoon, early good afternoon to people in the Western Hemisphere, and good evening to people in the Eastern Hemisphere. So thank you so much, Dr. Biswas and Dr. Lobchenko, for giving me an opportunity to talk in this particular event of World Soil Day. And most importantly, before I kind of move forward with my talk, of course, I'm going to present you some data on an experiment that we conducted, and not just me, but a whole host of researchers. We conducted in the northeastern part of United States. But before I talk specifically about that, I would like to emphasize a couple of things about just why do we need to celebrate a World Soil Day? Why do we need to encourage people? Following up with all that was said by Dr. Biswas and Dr. Lobchenko, the only couple of things that I would like to add is it is really important at this stage to not consider soil as a dirt, or to not think of soil as just dirt, but consider soil as a living resource. And it's really, really important for everybody to kind of think about that more than 30% of the entire biodiversity of this planet is actually in that black box or brown box, however you want to call it. And so it's really, really important that we understand and we realize that soils are so invariably important, not just for ecosystem health, but human well-being as well, because not only just all our resources are dependent on soil, but so are such a huge number of organisms that we completely don't think about or cannot see or get overlooked. So I would just kind of remember or encourage or remind people to think about all of these different issues, because it's important that it's not just why the Food and Agricultural Association of the UN has been talking about keep soil alive and protect soil biodiversity. These are campaigns that, again, like I said, are very, very important to raise awareness to such a critical issue, because we tend to, again, just reduce soil.
The picture is not getting clear.
Excuse me?
Then, just wait for a moment, there was a connectivity issue. So I have to just again ready open it. I'm sharing now. Yeah.
Hello?
Moment, please.
Okay.
Moment, individual because one. Now, is it okay, Dr. Chinchini?
Yeah. You can just keep it in this slide, and I was just gonna give a very brief introduction on why what I do and what am I going to basically talk about. So as I was mentioning to everybody, if you could hear me in the last 5 minutes or so, it is really important that we think about these soil microbes, not because these are some important biodiversity criteria, but it's more importantly, those are the microbes that are making nutrients available for plants for them to be able to take up from the soil so that they can build those nutrients back into plant bodies. And then eventually we as consumers, as we consume, whether we directly consume plant parts or whether we consume animals that eat those plant parts, either way, that's our source of nutrients. So we do have to remember that we cannot ignore like a significant portion of soil biodiversity or just biodiversity of the entire planet. And with that, I would like to kind of introduce you towards a more specific topic that I wanted to talk about today. And I personally am a terrestrial ecosystem ecologist. So what that means is I work with ecosystems, and I am very interested to work with, and I continue to work with, lots of terrestrial ecosystems. Generically speaking, those are more heterogeneous ecosystems like forest ecosystems. And so today I'm going to present you some work that I did in northeastern part of the United States. And here, what I want to kind of remind you is this is just a natural forest ecosystem. This hasn't been, artificially planted or anything. This has been clear cut, and then after that clear cut, regenerated natural ecosystems. These are experimental protected forests in which we are doing these types of experiments. Yeah? Hello?
So, please go on.
Okay, cool. We can move on to the next slide.
Yep.
The next one. So this is how a typical northeastern hardwood ecosystem basically looks like. That's a forest ecosystem with beautiful, trees. And like I said, do you mind pressing your cursor? Yep, thank you. Yeah, so you saw a picture of the above ground ecosystem, right? A forest ecosystem. And what you need to kind of think of is when we look at it, we look at all these beautiful greenery and trees, but we tend to forget the trees are basically on that soil layer. And it's essentially important that we think about the availability of nutrients in that soil layer before we can think about the health of the trees. So whenever biogeochemists talk about stoichiometry, what they're talking about is the relative availability of individual atoms and compounds. And so whenever I'm referring to stoichiometry in this particular presentation, what I'm talking about is the relative availability of nitrogen to phosphorus, the relative availability of carbon to nitrogen, or phosphorus to nitrogen, and so on and so forth. So if you think about this, depending on how fertile a soil is in a forest ecosystem, of course it's going to translate into what is the relative stoichiometry and what is the health of the microbes that are actually in the soil layer itself. And for obvious reasons, soil layers differ based as you go down deep into the horizon. The soil layers and the microbes that are in those layers, they're going to change in their availability of nitrogen to phosphorus in their bodies. And that will translate overall to the entire soil layer. So the stoichiometry of, or the relative availability of nutrients, whether it's nitrogen or phosphorus in microbial bodies, is going to have a very major influence on what is the availability and recycling of soil available nitrogen and available phosphorus. And why am I actually talking about soil nitrogen and phosphorus, you might ask? Because the most important thing, if you think about generically for people who are not working just with soils, but nitrogen and phosphorus are these macronutrients which are required for building bodies. And so whether we think about nitrogen in terms of proteins, or whether we think about phosphorus in terms of DNA, RNA, nucleic acids, these are all the living matter that basically gets put into living cells. So it's really important to kind of think about, if NNP is available in microbes, that is the available nutrients that's going to basically translate into what's available in the plant system, and then eventually what's going to come over to animal systems. So if you can move one more slide, please. So like I was saying, it's very, very important to think about why nitrogen and phosphorus is so important. So, and not only that, there has been a lot of, studies that have basically talked and gone and conducted these analysis of understanding how microbes vary based on how much nitrogen and phosphorus are available in those soil systems. And a very recent comprehensive meta-analysis kind of pulled in a whole lot of data from across the world, and what they found was microbial biomass. Now, what do I mean by the word biomass? Biomass is whatever's inside that living cell, because majority of the microbes are, unicellular, or in certain cases, if it's fungi, they could be multicellular, and so on and so forth. But what we want to know is how much of that nitrogen available that's in the soil is basically being available for the microbes to then henceforth do their recycling, processes, and so on and so forth. But it was found that nitrogen limits microbial growth in soil. What that basically translates is if you add a ton of nitrogen, or the soil is fertile with nitrogen, that will basically help the microbes to grow. And that growing of microbes is going to help the plants or the plant roots to be able to take up a lot more nitrogen. So, and not only that, we cannot ignore the effect of phosphorus in soils. And the most important part that was found out by that particular study was phosphorus limits microbial metabolism. Now, what I mean by metabolism is microbes are living creatures too, and they need to respire, they need to live, they need to reproduce, and so on and so forth. So those types of processes are basically compiled under microbial metabolism. It's not directly growth or adding a whole bunch of nutrients to make your body tissues, but it's actually the processes that once you scale it up at a ecosystem level, makes a big difference in thinking about how much carbon dioxide is basically being absorbed, how much carbon dioxide is basically released, and so on and so forth. But what was interesting was these studies always look at either nitrogen or phosphorus. They don't ever look at what happens when you add them together. So let's see if we can move to the next slide, if we can figure that out. So what we or our group tried to do is we wanted to know if the microbial stoichiometry and nutrient mineralization, the word nutrient mineralization basically means converting inorganic forms of organic forms of nutrients. Say, for example, if you think about urea, if you think about that's a very organic type of a nitrogen source. If you convert that urea into ammonia, so from organic to inorganic, that's what mineralization basically is talking about. So what means is because plants and microbes, they essentially only take up those ammonia or the inorganic forms of nutrients because they cannot take up very big molecules. Urea is a pretty big molecule and it's not going to be able to be, taken up as is. So we do add a lot of nitrogen by means of urea addition, if you think about fertilization, but then the urea needs to be broken down into that inorganic form, which is ammonia, and then the plants can take up ammonia. So what happens is we wanted to kind of study this change in the relative availability of nitrogen and phosphorus, not only in the microbial bodies, but also in the whether that change can influence how much soil nitrogen and phosphorus varies in the layers that we wanted to examine. And what we tried to do this work, we hypothesized that the stoichiometry of soil microbial biomass is going to be sensitive. If I go and add a whole bunch of nitrogen and phosphorus from outside, that is going to itself change how much nitrogen and phosphorus is going to be available in the microbial bodies itself. And we also wanted to ask that question, what if we added both of them together? How does that affect, whether that causes any additive effects or whether that multiplies or gives some sort of an interactive effect or not? So if we could move forward, I would explain you how we did it all. So this is just like where did I do this experiment? We chose 13 different forest stands, and these are all the way towards, if we could go to the next slide, I can just tell everything in there. Thank you. Just one more click, please. Yeah, so I am this particular experiment was conducted in a really wide scale. And in terms of scale, just to give you some sort of a idea about magnitude, the first inset picture from where that arrow is coming out, that's just showing you central New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire is a state within the 50 states of the United States of America, and that's just one particular state. And inside that, there's these experimental forests that are protected. These are called White Mountain National Forest. And within those, we chose 13 different forest sites. And each of those forest sites, just to give you an idea, it's 50 by 50 meters. So that's quite a big number of, like, quite a substantial part of forest area that we chose in each of these sites, 50 by 50 meters, 4 separate plots or experimental treatments. So if we click one more, I'll be able to show you what the design was. Yep. Let's move on. One more. Thank you. One more. Yeah. So what this particular diagram is basically showing you is, imagine one particular site, because I said 3 different sites are there, right? These are forest stands, and each of these squares that you see are 50 by 50 meters. So that's a substantial amount of forest area that we are using as treatments. Now, what are these treatments? These treatments are, the white box that you see has been left as it is. It hasn't been treated with any fertilizer. The red box that you see in this particular 4 boxes, that red box has phosphorus added. And that amount of phosphorus is just phosphorus in terms of sodium monophosphate application. And this application was done once towards the beginning of the growing season. So just to give you an idea, in temperate forests, the growing season basically lasts from June through August. That's it. So once August is done, the trees are done growing. And then again, summer comes back every year and the trees start to pick up. So we applied for phosphorus only in the red box. And in the blue box, we applied just nitrogen. And in the purple box, we applied nitrogen and phosphorus together at the same rates as we have applied individually. And the reason behind why this was done is because, like I said, there's enough evidence of what nitrogen does to soil microbial activity, what phosphorus does to soil microbial activity. But nobody has ever combined that information to kind of understand what happens when we add both of these. And do we actually need to add both of these? So just to give you an idea, this is how that experiment was done. And this experiment was a part of a bigger nutrient limitation project that was conducted. It's a long-term experimental study that has been conducted since 2011. The fertilization has begun. And even before that, we collected a whole lot of pre-treatment data. So now if we move on, one more slide, like one more click. So this is just to give you an idea of what was the application rate. So nitrogen was applied at a scale of 30 kilograms nitrogen per hectare per year, which is in forms of ammonium nitrate. That's what the formula is talking about. And phosphorus was applied as 10 kilograms per hectare per year. And that's in terms of that sodium monophosphate fertilizer powder. Okay, so one more. Just before we added the nutrients, this is a basic soil layer by showing you soil cores. So if you look at both of these, I don't know, can you see my cursor, everybody? If you can, if you look at the left-hand side of the image, you will see that's a typical forest soil core, the first 10 centimeters. So at the very top, you have very brittle organic layer, and then you start to notice that a smaller chunk of that dark colored organic matter layer, which is the OA or the A horizon. And then eventually towards the bottom part of the image, you start to see the mineral horizon. That means, as you can see, these are pretty acidic soils. They don't have a whole lot of organic matter, but if you zoom into that, and look at the right-hand side image, you will see that even within that, there are separation of the clear organic layers, as you can see. So the darker the color, the blackish the color looks like, the soil looks black, it has more and more organic matter. And the lighter the color, it has less and less organic matter. And that's where that soil microbial health is so important in these organic fractions. So if we can move one more. So what did I do? What we did is we went around all those 4 boxes, and 4 boxes times 13. So you can see we basically looked around the entire White Mountain National Forest in central New Hampshire, and we ran around the forest floor and we kept collecting a whole bunch of soil cores. And so we collected soil cores, and we basically tried to analyze what's the amount of nitrogen, what's the amount of phosphorus available there. And also, not only that, we have to extract microbes by using, microbial fumigations and microbial biomass, because unless you know how much microbes are present in that amount of soil layer that you're collecting using your soil core, you cannot extrapolate that for the ecosystem scale. So we also measured microbial biomass. We basically, what we did is, in this particular jar, what you're looking at is, this is a mason jar with a little tiny bottle of chloroform and a tiny, beaker full of a little bit of soil. What this particular method is trying to do is that chloroform is basically killing or splitting those microbial cells. And then we can analyze that particular soil layer after a certain period of incubation to measure how much what was prior to, before this particular, and you can compare the controlled soils, and you can compare the phosphorus soils, nitrogen soils, NP soils, and so on and so forth. And the nitrogen availability was measured by measuring nitrogen mineralization. And what that means is how much of that, you added ammonium nitrate or you didn't add ammonium nitrate, how much of that was converted into usable forms of ammonia. And that was measured by net nitrogen mineralization. And so once we quantified all these in the lab, what we found was, if we can move to the next slide, please. What we found is, this is a really cool finding that we saw. So what would you think, generally speaking? If you add nitrogen, soil nitrogen availability should go up, right? And that's exactly what you see in every single N bar in this particular figure, whether it's in the OE horizon, which is the topmost, whether you look at the OA horizon, which is the middle layer, and whether you look at the mineral horizon, relative to the control, all of the N bars are higher. However, not all of them are significantly different, as you can see. Of course, it's significantly different in OE and OA layers, but however, we did not achieve that significant result in the mineral layer. But what's really interesting is, yes, of course, nitrogen availability increased, but if you look at what happens when nitrogen and phosphorus are added together, it's a striking result. And that striking result is really important when you look at the mineral horizon. For obvious reasons, you add nitrogen to a system, nitrogen availability goes up. But when you add nitrogen and phosphorus together, nitrogen availability decreases. So if you look at the bottommost panel in the mineral horizon, when you're adding in the treatment of nitrogen and phosphorus together, you see net nitrogen mineralization, or the availability of available ammonia, has gone down significantly relative to the control. Now that kind of piques a question that something interactive is going on. One of the nutrients is kind of either making something more available or less available, depending on what was there already. So let's keep on figuring out what else do we see in this type of after treatment soils. And so that was nitrogen availability. Now let's look at bicarbonate extractable P, which is giving you an index or a measure of how much P is available in these soils. So if you look at all these layers again, adding phosphorus, increases a little bit of phosphorus availability in the soil. Whether you look at OE, OA, or mineral, in all of them, practically there's a tiny bit increase in the available phosphorus. However, we don't see a striking NNP interaction, other than the organic A layer, which is the middle one that you see. So control nitrogen, pretty much they have same amount of phosphorus available in the system. Then you add P, a little increase in the availability. And then you add N plus P together, a bit significant increase between control and N plus P together. But other than that, there is nothing much to, see from here. Now let's look at another metric. So now if you look at microbial biomass, what I mean by microbial biomass is what's the relative amount of NNP available in the microbial tissues itself? Because we killed all of those microbes in the soil using chloroform fumigation. Now we quantified that biomass. So what this particular set of figures is showing you is the OE top, middle, and mineral horizon, and what's the microbial NNP availability and how much that is changing. So if you look at it, the most important takeaway from this particular thing is the microbial biomass N to P decreased in response to nitrogen and phosphorus additions. If you look at the OE layer, relative to control, N, NP, and N plus P together is reducing that ratio of how much nitrogen is available relative to how much phosphorus. But did not do that pattern, or did not show that pattern, whether you think about the OA horizon or if you think about the mineral horizon. So there's a little bit to unpack. When a ratio goes down, what that means is think about in terms of the numerator and the denominator. Yes, I know fractions are complicated, right? We don't like to think about fractions, but what is happening is relative to the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus availability is increasing. So if we go one more step ahead with our results, one slide. Thank you so much. So now if we separate that out and not think in terms of complicated ratios, if you look here at the top panel, at the left-hand side most graph, the microbial biomass nitrogen, so how much nitrogen is being assimilated in the bodies of those microbes, you will see that there's very little difference. There's a little bit of, clear difference that you can start to notice is when you add a ton of nitrogen from outside, that microbial biomass nitrogen goes down if you compare the control versus nitrogen graphs. Now here, my question is, why did that happen? Where is all that nitrogen going? What is that nitrogen being used by those soil microbes? What are they in turn doing? In phosphorus, if you look at how much microbes are assimilating phosphorus, when you add phosphorus in their bodies is increasing in availability. And what is interesting is, so your likely explanation is they, instead of assimilating that in their bodies in terms of nitrogen, they're utilizing that nitrogen and doing something else. And what are they doing? That's what's going to, let's start to see if we can answer that puzzle by looking at microbial respiration. What that means is how much CO2 is being released by those microbes. Just because you gave them lots of goodies and lots of sugar and lots of sweets, did they actually break it down and grow more and release a lot of CO2? So microbial respiration, which is the rightmost graph, that is going to be that other piece of the puzzle. So if we can hit the next, one more click, please. Actually, a couple more. I have animations in the slide. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, we're good. So if you look at microbial respiration result, microbial respiration was basically suppressed by nitrogen addition in the mineral soil, but it didn't happen in the organic layer. So that's where we thought that, okay, so when microbial biomass didn't increase when you added nitrogen, they must be using that amount of nitrogen into doing something else. But the answer was, even though we were expecting this particular, graph or this particular bar to be higher relative to the control, because I was thinking they would respire more. If they haven't added to their bodies, they would be releasing all that back into the soil layer. However, we did not find that. And so here, if we can go to the next slide, what we think has happened is, you can click a couple more so all of those sentences come up. Sorry, I used animation because I did not know whether I would be sharing it or Dr. Biswas. So we did find some of the support that microbial stoichiometry does change based on whether I add nitrogen or phosphorus, or nitrogen and phosphorus together from outside. But what happened is, instead of showing that pattern consistently across all the horizons, that pattern was only consistently found in the organic layer. And that's where a lot of action is going on when you think about soil biodiversity. So if microbial stoichiometry is so sensitive to nutrient additions in the top layers, that's where basically, like I said, your plant and microbial relationships and interrelationships are going to matter the most. Because in the mineral horizon, not a whole lot of roots are basically going to be able to go down and take up, unless you're thinking about really ginormous plant root systems. But what we found is, it was in the mineral soil where nitrogen to phosphorus stoichiometry did not respond to treatments. But that is where we detected the strongest, effect of nitrogen addition on how much nitrogen will be available in future for plant use or bioavailable or biotic use. So it kind of perplexes us as to how much these different, of course, these are very small additions relative to, if you compare this back to an agroforestry situation, or if you think about an agricultural production, of course, that 30 kilograms per hectare per year is nowhere comparable to a higher available, fertilizer treatment, which agroforestry situations could do. But at the same time, these are going to give you an idea about mechanistic links as to, if I do this, how is it going to get translated into what's happening into that soil biological layer. So if we can move to one more slide, please. So this effect of change in microbial biomass seems to be a little bit more in control with phosphorus. And the reason why I'm saying this is, this might not be a pattern that you see across the board, across the world, because you have to remember where this experiment is being conducted. This experiment is being conducted in geologically younger soils. So temperate forest ecosystems, northeastern North America, that entire region is geologically a much more younger type of soil. And in younger soils, what happens is nitrogen is available in plenty, but phosphorus is not available in plenty, because what happens is, in geologically poor soils, say for example India, if you think about majority parts of India, soil there it's a geologically much more older soil. And if it's a geologically older soil, it doesn't have that much amount of phosphorus available in the system for plants and microbes to kind of depend on it or utilize it. So take my results with the context of where this is applied to, or where this could be applied to. But however, it's a very, very important thing to kind of think about, what are these mechanistic links when you add fertilizer. It's not going to be a blanket treatment. It's not going to be that you go select a field or select a forest ecosystem and you add a whole bunch of nutrient fertilizations or fertilizers to expect relatively high growth, because you do have to go and conduct pre-soil analysis to kind of think about how various different recycling processes are kind of linked together. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to mention, because don't think that microbes don't respire. Don't think that microbes don't create this organic matter along with the decomposing plant roots and the live plant roots that are kind of, there. And again, think about my results in the context of where you are doing this particular experiment, where you need to know how much nitrogen or phosphorus you can add, and you can change what the soil microbial health looks like. Okay, so with that, yeah, we can kind of go to the final slide. I have a whole bunch of people to acknowledge. This is not my project, and there's a whole lot of funding involved. There's a whole lot of people and a whole group of scientists involved who are working constantly kind of finding these ecosystem links. And with that, I would like to say thank you for your attention, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about this.
Yeah, no, Dr.
You are not audible, madam.
Dr. Chenjini, let me see. It's all unmuted. So, your presentation has been very enlightening one, and to know about what I would say, the very chemistry of
getting audible in a proper way, madam.
Where you please unmute yourself and then that's all.
Can you stop sharing the screen? I prepare the slides with the questions we have.
Yeah.
Firstly, I would say thank you very much. It was amazing, outstanding presentation and very informative and open really more complex point of view on soil production and micro elements in it and biodiversity connection. Yeah, I would like to share, but I need to, okay, now I can do it. So we have only 3 questions in the chat box. I believe that it was a lot of information and it's difficult to make a bunch of questions because everyone should process a lot. So first question was, I think, that to Dr. Sas Biswas. So there was a question, I would like to know if there's any specific treatment measures for treating the polluted soil like there are for the water pollution. But I think it was the first question to Sas Biswas. So please, if you have an answer.
May I please repeat, Ganna? Dr. Ganna, can you repeat the question?
You can see it on the screen as well, and I would repeat. I would like to know if there's any specific treatment measures for treating the polluted soil like there's for treating the water pollution.
In fact, what we do find, only when the soil is not fertile in many places. So if it is acidic, then they have the chemical fertilizer to make it of other way around. And so the treatment is only for reviving the soil fertility. But for the water pollution, as such, I have no idea about what work has been done on the water chemistry of such soil that is reaching to the different ecosystem or wetland ecosystem.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the next question, I think it was for me. Can we assure market to sensitize the farmers to adopt agroforestry techniques? I should say that world communities, for example, International Center of Agroforestry, European Federation of Agroforestry, are doing a lot of efforts to introduce agroforestry into agriculture in extensive lands because we need to change our minds in considering land use, and we need to think about more sustainable use. Unless we can lose a lot of soils, we can lose biodiversity, and our life won't be so clear and so happy if we don't care about the lands. So I think that we need firstly to change minds of average citizens of the planet to adopt the agroforestry techniques. But of course, for it's not so fast changing the situation, but global warming and climate changes, they make to think more often and about these changes and challenges we need to deal with. That's my answer on this question. And the last one, or not, I think not the last one, there's some. Okay, I really don't know whom is addressed this question. Turning into fine soil particles, it takes 1,000 years and it holds the same for the ecosystems, but for making way for humans to grow economically and making the life facilities, agriculture available lands and fertile forest lands in either dumped or put to one to of no use. How to change the mindset and make public aware of such effects on these ecosystems? I can start the answer, and if my colleagues want to add something, you're welcome. I think NGOs and ecologically orientated person need to make examples. Every changes are difficult to implement, and we need to show how it works, because if we just say in the words, just share information, it's not enough. We need to really make a lot of efforts, practice, and share the results that are successful. In this case, we can change the awareness of the public. And if someone wants to add, please.
Yeah, there's just, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Biswas.
No, you please.
I was just going to say, we need to stop thinking about soil as just dirt, because that's a mindset that we can, I mean, no matter how many lectures I give about nitrogen and phosphorus, people are not going to pay attention unless you can relate it back to something that they are getting right out of that ecosystem, for that matter. So as long as you can break it down, I would say, let's not make the science too eclectic. Let's actually talk to people in a language in which they understand and why it's such an important. Because if you cannot keep the soil alive, I don't think you can keep us alive or our ecosystem healthy until, and so it's an important thing that we just need to know how to have that discourse. And of course, like you said, have that, show those examples, show how we're, like, you know, how fertility matters, why it matters, connected back to the health of the ecosystem, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
That's very much fine and very nice. And I understand one thing from these 2 presentations. I think I'm also included in that. I find somehow these works should be brought as an extension material and brought to the school and college level, so that the children and the school going and colleges, they understand about the subject, about the importance of the soil. And if you see the topic of soil biodiversity came by only the International Convention on Biological Diversity, and after that I have no much idea, but if that work has been done, like the work Dr. Ganna has shown, how important it comes when it comes to understand about the soil and soil. Besides that, we do talk about, with reference to Dr. Sinjini, even at the microbial level, what microbe means. We think about the diet of an elephant, we don't think a diet of a microbe. And there we understand that what we require, we still, what I believe, there is still we do require to go into that. And of course, Dr. Sinjini's work is very, very important. And Dr. Ganna's work on wind tracks and all, I find, it has taken, at least me, by storm the academic knowledge.
Thank you.
There are all the questions are finished now?
I have one more like kind of personal question sent personally. So about three
Repeat.
species for the planting under high pressure of industrial pollutants. I cannot recommend any exact species because we need to know climate and soil conditions. It cannot be the same species for United States, for India, for Ukraine. We should deal with the species that are local and find out the most resistant species and try to implement in highly industrial polluted areas, but we cannot give like one universal receipt for such question. So I'm sorry, I cannot completely.
This is one wonderful question. In fact, about the indigenous species, that's very much important because we do know even those waters which occur in the Indian desert and all, there have been studies of their electrophoresis, and we do know what varieties and all. Many of them have developed their all dendrological features against the storm in in Rajasthan and all, but they are all finishing gradually. As you said, we do require to emphasize on it. And if we see the great monument, archaeologically important, uh, I'll say world monument in India, there's one Konark Temple. Around the Konark Temple, way back in 1970s, the Cassiopeia was done to check the wind and the dust to save that monument. And those were taken from the lot of the phenotypes and genotypic and genetic research typical of Indian origin. So, but when it comes to the exotic species, people go about that. So that's fine now. We can wind up now because we are already over time. May I ask Dr. Sandhya? Dr. Sandhya, can you unmute and come?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here, sir.
Please, your part for Thanksgiving, please.
Yes, sir.
You can come on video too.
Sir, it seems there is some problem with my camera. I'm trying to do that, but
Anyway, then you come over there.
I'm really sorry for that.
No, doesn't
So,
matter.
very good evening to all, and very good morning to Dr. Goswami here. I, Dr. Sandhya Goswami, on behalf of Organizing Committee of Joint International Webinar on World Soil Day 2020, wish to express my gratitude to our Honorable Chairman Shri Arvind Gupta, Dr. Pant, Principal, Dr. Arun Kumar, Director, Dolphin PG Institute, Dehradun, Dr. Victor Morer, Principal and Head of Forest Restoration and Melioration Department, National University of Life and Environment Science, Ukraine, for providing encouragement and support to organize this fruitful event. I am very grateful to Professor Biswas for giving me this opportunity to offer vote of thanks. I extend a hearty thank you to the distinguished speakers, deep sense of appreciation for all the participants for their valuable contribution. Thanks are acknowledged to the today's speaker. So I extend grateful thanks to learned speaker Dr. Sas Biswas, a renowned forest botanist, formerly of Forest Research Institute and presently heading the Department of Forestry at Institute, India. In his talk on Indian forest soil biodiversity for judicious utilization and management, he stressed the need for developing criteria, indicators for threat value assessment, and categorization of forest soil biodiversity, research support and cooperation from regional to international level, and development of exchange of best practices, joint ventures in education, extension, etc. Dr. Ganna Lobchenko, Associate Professor, Forest Restoration and Melioration Department at National University of Life and Environment Sciences of Ukraine, she emphasized about the soil erosion problems and its solution through agroforestry. According to Dr. Ganna, 31% of Ukraine territory suffers erosion, and windbreak plantation provides soil conservation as well as economical benefits of windbreak plantation in terms of increased cereal grain production. But these windbreaks requires restoration, basically due to the illegal cutting, and that illegal cutting or felling is more due to the lack of awareness. So there is she that there is requirement of making people more and more aware about the need of these agroforestry practices. The last presentation we have from Dr. Shinjini Goswami, Assistant Professor of Biology, Lees McRae College, School of Natural and Behavioral Science, North Carolina, USA. And in her talk on microbes mineralize nitrogen by accumulate in response to NNP fertilization in northern hardwood forests. First of all, she told us that yes, 30% of biodiversity is in brown box, that is soil. And here it is very important that to understand the behavior of microbes towards the soil nutrients, and this is important to understand the need of the soil nutrient addition requirements appropriately, so that ultimately soil can be kept healthy. Healthy soil will give us ecosystem. So I am very thankful to all the three very learned speakers. I also would like to, my thanks is owed to the delegates and participants assembled here from different parts of the globe and country on this World Soil Day 2020 deliberation. I take this opportunity to thank member of organizing committee, Dr. A.K. Unial, Dr. Tahir, Dr. Chamoli, Dr. Rawat, Dr. Mandeep Kaur, Mr. Manish Kumar, and Dr. Ganna. Definitely, there shall be an opportunity for the faculty, students, and all the participants to gather from all the learned resource persons today on the soil's importance in our lives. Thanks are always due to Mr. Sas Biswas for assisting in linking and smooth conductance from India, of course, of his corporate time. I am very grateful to Professor Biswas for guiding and giving us an opportunity to be the part of team to organize this joint event. And this is our second joint event um, with the National University of the Ukraine. And as no program can become successful with a single person, so finally I extend my big thanks to team Neolis Ukraine and team Dolphin India for their efforts. Thank you all for making the event successful with your contribution to make the day. In words of Professor Biswas, I would like to end this vote of thanks that soul of earth is soil, and soil for all we need. Thank you very much to one and all. Namaste.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Shinjini.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Summarize. Okay.
Okay, Dr. Ganna,
Have
congratulations.
success in your research.
Yes,
Have a good one.
Thank you.
wonderful. Good night. Good to everybody. So we end the meeting now.